is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's fired. He throws. It is.
The agony of defeat.
Frazier! Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
Hello and welcome back to the Past Our Prime podcast, the trifecta of Bill Mahoney, Mark Hoffman, and yours truly, Scott Johnston, as we look back at the September 2nd, 1974 issue of Sports Illustrated with Evel Knievel. On the cover, it's Labor Day weekend. Labor Day, the unofficial end of summer, because it used to mean school was starting back up. But nowadays, school starts like right after the 4th of July, it seems.
Does. Yeah,
It makes no sense.
earlier and earlier. We always had 3 months. Now it's like right at the beginning of August.
Yeah.
Go back, and I'm like, it's 1,000 degrees outside.
Yeah, why would you send your kid to school when they're burning up
Yeah.
outside? That makes
I mean, our hottest months are August and oftentimes September.
Yeah.
And so it makes no sense. I don't get it at all.
Yeah, because we used to get out, what is it? I think high school I got out, like, you get out mid-June.
Mid-June,
then
you go
July,
back.
August,
and
September.
you go back the Tuesday or Wednesday after
Labor Day.
Right. It
Yeah.
was great.
You knew it, you know.
I guess if you start in August, then at least you can look forward to Labor Day and have like a 3-day weekend.
But what they do now, though, is they make there a lot more days off. Like my daughter, in Christmas time, she has basically a month off. It's like the middle of December to like 2 weeks into January.
Yeah, that is one of the reasons I think they did it, was they wanted all the schools to be the same.
Yeah.
And high school, I don't know about you guys, but for me, we would have that Christmas break, but it was right in the middle of the first semester. So you had like 2 weeks off,
Yeah.
and then you'd come back and you'd have finals.
Right.
Now they want to have finals before the Christmas
Yeah,
break.
right.
That's logical.
That makes sense.
Yes,
But I'd
Well,
still take it the way we had it.
I do
when
too.
I
I
went
would too.
to UCLA on the quarter system, you had your finals before the
Right.
winter breaks because everything was just 10 weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
And then finals week.
Now, one thing about Labor Day, though, that is growing up, I mean, it was like sports at its best,
Yeah.
man. You had baseball entering the last month, football and college football, pro and college both starting. You had the U.S. Open.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the
Hockey and basketball. Yeah, it was all getting
Yeah.
there.
The
Yeah.
first week of the NFL season was always Labor Day weekend, which was great. That's not the case anymore.
No.
Now they start football after
Yeah,
the Labor Day
it's
weekend.
the Thursday after usually,
Right.
but is that even true this year? Because Labor Day is really early this year. It's today. It's the 2nd. How about this? I saw this about Labor Day. In the U.S. state of Virginia, the amusement park industry has successfully lobbied for legislation requiring most school districts in the state to have their first day of school after Labor Day in order to give families another weekend to visit amusement parks in the state. The statute has been nicknamed the King's Dominion Law after one such park. It was repealed in 2019, but you guys were big amusement park guys back in the day.
Heck yeah.
So I imagine you would be all over having one last chance to go ride the roller coasters.
I still love that.
I mean, I liked them, but I didn't love them. You know?
I did. Yeah, I
Yes,
did.
You were a thrill seeker.
Yes. Not as much now, but I loved.
Well, remember we did that trip to Magic Mountain? I can't remember who was
You
there.
retired.
Yeah.
Me,
No.
Mitch, Dave, and you.
Yes.
And at the
So-
end of the time, at the end of the day of Magic Mountain, Mark brought us all together and said, "Guys, that's it. I'm never doing this again. I'm too old." He was 35. He was 35.
No,
and
we
then
did-
we couldn't
we did-
find
we did.
Mark for a while because we had gotten wet in one of the rides. We thought something happened to him, so we were worried. So Mitch, Dave, and I started to walk toward the bathroom. No, Mark was using the
dryer.
the dryer to get his shoe dry.
It was all soaking wet. No, but we were on this one ride, and it wasn't like a real high ride that went up and down.
No.
It was just one of these rides that went boom, boom, boom. So it was
Yeah,
like
it's
really
true.
jolty, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And that just, my stomach just went, ugh.
That's where he knew.
Yeah.
Mark threw in the towel. Remember Dave, Mitch, and I said, "You're 35," and Mark
Yes.
said, "Nope," and he's never been back.
35 going on 85.
And I
Well,
live
it's-
next to
it's
Magic
perfect
Mountain.
that you gave up roller coasters because they were too much for you in an issue when we're talking about Evel Knievel.
That's right. Well, you never have to worry about Mark jumping one bus. Me
No,
neither,
no.
but still.
Shoot. Not
Mark
even a
won't
little
even
leaf.
take the bus.
No, not even the little leaf on the ground you would put there. I wouldn't be jumping it.
All right, Mark, let's get started by trying to get people to smoke.
Yeah, once again, I can't help it, but you know, you open up the magazine and the first page is a big cigarette ad for Vantage. And you have to remember, like, commercials had been banned just a few years earlier. I mean, cigarette commercials were super popular on television. They would tie into the shows. They banned them, so advertising was important. But the Surgeon General coming out and saying, you know, cigarettes can be bad for your health. That's not good for the tobacco industry. So, like, Vantage Cigarettes said to the 56 million people who smoke cigarettes, you know, a lot of people have been telling you not to smoke, especially cigarettes with high tar nicotine. But smoking provides you with a pleasure you don't want to give up. So naturally, we're prejudiced. We're in the business of selling them. Basically, they're just trying to push for low tar and nicotine, you know?
I mean, I just looked it up. So you said there's 56 million smokers.
According to this article, this
U.S. population was 214 million. You got to figure 20% of them are too young to smoke, right? So 1 out of 3 adults smoked back then.
But remember, when we were young, smoking was glorified.
Everyone
My
smoked.
mom and dad did it, and it seemed, I never liked it.
All
but
the
it seemed
athletes
so
did,
cool.
all the TV and
all-
movie stars.
The beautiful woman would always be
Yeah, the movies.
wow.
Yes. So if I had been born in the 30s or 40s, maybe I
we'd
would
all
be
be
smoking.
smoking.
Yeah, because that was the cool thing. That was manhood, you know.
And remember, they never. When I was young, my parents, all the windows would be up. They'd smoke. You'd just be in a haze of smoke.
Yes.
You never knew there was any
when
problems
I was like
with it.
13 or 14, I would steal my mom's cigarettes and smoke them because I thought it made me
really?
cool. Oh yeah.
I
but-
hated cigarettes.
But
You
then
were
I
a
got
rebel.
into running and
I was,
stuff,
man.
and I didn't like the
Smoked
smoke in my
everything else.
lungs, so I stopped. And it wasn't a very long period of time, but I always was like.
So did you, other than you, Mark, did you ever try smoking cigarettes, Scott?
No.
Okay, either did I.
Yeah,
I may
you
have done
noticed that you
once.
qualified that.
Well, I did because I didn't.
Yeah,
I hated people.
We
who
knew
smoked
Mark
in it.
did.
Yeah.
Oh
Just
man, I
always
was
smoking and drinking and rolling dice.
Yeah, Mark
Streaking.
Mark always
The
had that big
ganja.
bong in his hand. Make me a deal. Yeah.
Pass me. I need to do some shrooms.
I
now.
wish we had those pictures of Mark when he had the dreadlocks and everything. Just the coolest guy.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Take it
I
easy,
trade
Bill.
you Rick Roden, man.
That's right.
It'd be easier to deal with then.
Easy to deal with. now.
Scorecard, Billy, you go first.
Okay, this is just an easy one. They were on hand for the presentation after Drunken Fool won the feature race last week at Cincinnati's River Downs was the 405 Club. We all know what that is, don't we? It's an Alcoholic Anonymous group. So Drunken Fool wins the race with them there. They said the message might have been a little more effective had Drunken Fool come in dead last. Yes.
That's awesome.
But
That's
the drunk,
a great
yeah.
story. Yeah. Mark, what do you got? You
Well,
got a horrible little
I got
story.
a really, really sad one, and it's like, there was a baseball player, okay, named Alfredo Edmin, I believe.
Edmead.
And
Oh,
he
yeah, I remember
was
this.
only 18 years old. He was having a great season. He was batting like .319, 7 homers, 59 RBIs. I think he had 59 steals. Up-and-comer playing in Class A Cal League ball, which was Carolina League. So they're playing a game, and the pitcher was batting for the opposing team, hit a little fly ball. Second baseman's running out. He's the outfielder. He's running in. They come charging. Just as the second baseman's about to make the catch, he collides. Edmund dives for the ball, and they collide, and Cruz's knee sticks him in the head. He crumples to the field in a pool of blood. They send him to the hospital. He dies from a massive skull fracture.
Yeah.
It was the first baseball player to be killed on the field since the infamous Ray Chapman was beamed by a Carl Mays pitch. That was back in 1920.
Right.
So, I mean, just really, really sad. And this kid had all this promise.
Yeah, Steve Nicosia was on that team. He made it to the bigs. He was on the Pirates championship team in 1979. He said he was just a shining star, probably one of the top 2 or 3 players in the whole organization that year. That kid was incredible. He probably at some point was going to be the right fielder in Pittsburgh. We looked down. I was 19 years old. I had no idea. We didn't even have a trainer back then. The other team had a trainer who came out on the field. When they turned his head, the whole side of his head was caved in. We knew he was dead right then. He remains the youngest death of any professional baseball player in history. Another one of those things where, like, it's amazing that we'd never heard this before.
No.
It's just an amazing story of this poor kid that a freak accident.
There's players that have died. Thurman
Yeah.
Munson in the plane crash.
Yeah.
Right.
There was a minor leaguer with the Mets, his last name Cole, who was a really hot prospect. He died in a car accident.
Right. Or remember the
Mike
three...
Miley from the Angels.
Or the Tim
young
Cruz,
guy.
what was it? In,
Lyman
the Indians?
Bostock.
Yeah, right. Lyman Bostock
Yeah,
murdered.
Steve Olin and Tim Cruz.
And who was the Angels guy? The pitcher.
Skaggs.
Yeah, but no, there was another pitcher that got in a car wreck.
Oh, yeah, Nick Adenhart.
Nick Adenhart,
yeah,
remember that?
And that was right in Fullerton, yeah.
Well, the Bostock
but
one
not
was,
on the field.
right.
Yeah,
Down the field.
yeah.
The Bostock one was really sad because apparently the shooter wasn't even aiming for him. He was aiming for the lady in the car.
Yep. But no, you don't. I mean, we see it. We all watch baseball games. You see guys run into each other. You don't think anything of it. But these are two pretty big guys with all their weight going forward, crashing into each other. I'm sort of surprised it doesn't happen, or worse injuries don't happen. Maybe they didn't die, but that's terrible.
All right, they said it. Mark, something a little more...
Uplifting.
Yes, please.
Dave Stockton explaining why he thinks he's a better golfer than when he won the 1970 PGA Championship. It's the attitude. It's a lot more fun to walk along and laugh and talk with people than to trudge down the fairway with your head down looking at the worms. And it's a good attitude.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Yeah.
Bill has that attitude because Bill will go out and he will meet somebody he has no idea who it is and start a conversation with them and just find out stuff. So he's not looking down at the worms. He's looking up and talking to other people. My wife's like that too.
But also remember, when you talk to somebody, everybody wants to talk for the most part. We live in a somewhat of a disjointed society.
Right.
So you talk to someone, and they're always willing to say, because that's what they want. We don't have all that anymore. So, it's fun to talk to certain people.
Well, moods are contagious, too.
They are.
Good moods, bad moods.
Yeah, you walk around with a look on your face. It's amazing how garbage comes your way.
Yeah.
You walk around with I always tell Callie, my daughter, watch the people that have lemon faces. And she goes, what does that mean? I said, some people have faces and it looks like they've sucked on a lemon. She goes, what does that mean? I said, a lot of them are probably carrying around unhappiness. And I said, so if you can, try to say something nice to see if you can turn that around.
Or stay away from
I've told her that too. I said the same thing.
I said,
try
and then, but don't, because they'll bring you down.
I said, usually if you, because there's one of a person that's in her life has that. And I always think, just be nice. And I said, but you don't have to go overboard.
That little Linda?
No, I can't say it 'cause if anyone listens to the
I
show,
know, I'm
they'll
kidding.
pick that. They'll know who it is.
I hate that little kid.
Yeah.
No, but I just tell her, I said, you got to be careful with that. But yeah, there's lemon face.
Who says Pruitt can't do it? The Cleveland Browns have never won a Super Bowl. In 2024, that's a big deal, but in 1974, it wasn't. Super Bowl was relatively new, and the Browns had, get this, only one losing season in 28 years at that point. They were really a model franchise, and they had a new toy, Greg Pruitt, second year back out of Oklahoma. He would end up being a 5-time Pro Bowler, 4 with the Browns and 1 with the Raiders as a punt kick returner. He would sign his autograph, Greg Pruitt, the breakaway kid, in 1979. We've talked about this earlier, about the ABC Superstars competition that we just loved back then. He won it. He won it in 1979. So
he had 3 1,000-yard rushing seasons.
Yeah, he was him and his brother.
I just thought it was just crazy because they're talking about this is all preseason football.
I know.
And all the guys are playing.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Joe Theismann, I'm thinking, this is preseason.
That's so funny you say that, Billy, because I wrote the thing about this article that was so different was that it was a preseason game and the regular players played. And it's not just because it was a strike. That's what happened back then.
Yeah.
The regulars
They
played 2 or 3 quarters.
Yes, they did.
Browns lost to the Redskins. In fact, I had to go back and look to see if the regular season had started because the way they were writing this article as if like, they lost on a last-second field goal. I was like, well, who cares?
And it was like one short little line in the article that goes, their preseason record is now 1-3. And I thought, preseason record, wow.
And that was Joe Theismann was a young QB out of Notre Dame. After 3 years in the CFL,
I never knew that either.
The NFL.
Did you guys know he played in the CFL?
I did.
I did not.
Yeah, I didn't know it was that long.
played at the CFL.
I knew that. I knew that.
Joe Kapp, remember the Vikings played in the CFL.
I didn't know that
But
Theismann
both
did,
Pruitt and Theismann, as he was
that's
originally known, were thought to be too small to play in the NFL, and both had fine careers despite that.
Pruitt's last year in football, 1984, won a Super Bowl with the
He
Raiders.
sure did, yes. Had a 97-yard punt return against the Redskins in a game the Redskins beat the Raiders, and then the Raiders got revenge on them in
The only
Super
game
Bowl.
that matters.
Yeah, exactly. Moving on, let's talk a little baseball. A man who'd never bite a dog, Joe Rudy, was the left fielder on 3 straight World Series champion teams in Oakland. Very good unsung ball player, but for a pretty short time period, a 4-time All-Star. He finished second. I didn't know this. He finished second in MVP voting in both 72 and 74. One of those guys that did everything very well, but not great at one particular thing. But my dad would say back in the day, you know, like when you needed a big hit, when you needed someone to come through in a big moment, Rudy was your guy.
Even defensively.
Yeah,
Glue guy.
exactly.
Defensively, he was just amazing defensive player.
And a glue guy.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
he-
right. You
Exactly.
need-
He'd be
that's
a glue
why
guy, yep.
when he
Glue
signed with
guy.
the Angels, main reason was because he was that sort of a glue guy. They couldn't turn the corner with one year, but they were just, Joe Rudy was a great player.
Wasn't
Undersung.
Rudy in the trade that Bowie Q nixed?
Yes.
I believe he was. Yeah.
Him and Raleigh, I think,
Yeah.
right?
But that article started weird because it was about Gene Tennis, how angry he was
Yes.
about being a catcher. And then I looked up, Gene Tennis played more games as a catcher than any other position. I kept thinking,
know.
you're pissed off in 74, but that's all you do is play catcher now.
Yeah.
I like the fact that Rudy and Reggie Jackson were very close.
They were very good friends.
Yeah,
That,
yeah.
You know, once again, those teams back then, not just Oakland, all of them, these minor leaguers, there wasn't free agency. They stayed together
Yeah.
for years.
Yep.
Other underrated players from that era in this article, Bill Singer, he
Mm-hmm.
won 20 games, completed 19 and threw 315 innings in 1973, but he was second fiddle to a guy named Nolan Ryan. Al Oliver was one of the
Al
most
Oliver's
great,
honored,
man.
I mean, what a
He was
hitter
always
he
on
was.
base.
Oh,
Always.
he would be a star today.
Yes, he would.
Because he was always on base. 6-time All-Star with a lifetime average of 303. But what gave Rudy the edge was being on a dynasty. That helped, right? I
Yeah.
mean, he had a lot of underrated players, but when you win 3 titles in a row,
You need
that helps.
You need guys on when those type teams. You have to have a guy like Rudy because not everyone can have the spotlight. And Mark was saying that's the glue guy.
He said, I'll just try to keep my mouth shut, do my job, and keep out of people's way. So we don't have too many of those guys now.
Wasn't one of the other guys they talked about there Ted Sizemore?
Yes.
I remember him more with the Dodgers.
Oh, is that
Remember
right?
the Cardinals?
Yeah, I remember him more. Yeah, mind you,
Yeah,
you
he
know.
was hitting behind Lou Brock this year.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
He was getting a lot of...
Another guy that just did his
Yep.
job.
Yeah. Ironing things out in Kinshasa, if I'm pronouncing that right. The upcoming Muhammad Ali-George Foreman fight is going to be in Zaire. You remember this fight, Mark?
I do.
Did you
I
go?
Very well. I did not go, but Foreman seemed invincible back then. He had just
Right.
dispatched Frazier. He was this big guy. And, Ali wasn't the same fighter he was before. So I don't think a lot of people thought that Ali could survive the barrage. I mean, Foreman was a little like Tyson before Tyson was there. He'd come out and pummel you.
Yeah,
you
he
know?
would. Yeah.
And he was a big dude.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because Ali was this personable guy, and Foreman was this very few words, very
Angry.
serious, angry,
Yeah, looked it,
no
yeah.
humor.
Yeah.
So if you would just say to someone back in '74 that he would be selling stuff, he would be this just
Happy-go-lucky.
a guy,
Yeah,
right.
just
Sort of a goofball in certain
Right.
ways.
Yeah.
With the
no one
commercials.
would believe you back
Just
then.
lovable.
Yeah, that's fair.
Lovable
That's fair.
giant.
Yeah.
You know? We won't get into exactly what happened in the fight yet because we got a lot of Muhammad Ali, George Foreman
Right.
issues coming up. But we will say that 62,000 people are going to be in the soccer stadium.
Mm-hmm.
The fight's going to start at 3 a.m. local time in Zaire, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So that it starts at 10 p.m. in New York, 7 p.m. on the West Coast. 3 hotels offer 446 first-class rooms. There's another 4,300 or so beds at the university dorms. The remaining foreigners will be put up in a resort called Naselli, about 30 miles from town.
Yeah, the
So-
government took all those buildings over to do that. That's at least what the article made it
Yes.
sound like. And the things they said about, like, they said that like each visitor's money is counted.
Right.
That if you leave the country with more foreign cash than he entered with, you're in deep trouble.
Yeah, and deep trouble doesn't mean a fine.
No, it doesn't. No, because they had said something that when you're there, the locals won't act out
Right.
because they said they had executed a bunch of them, a few weeks before. I'm thinking, doggone. And then they talked about the Machango worm. Did you read about that part? Yeah, it said,
Oh, yes, I did.
yeah,
Yes,
fight
I
visitors
did.
should make sure everything they wear in the country is laundered and ironed because ironing kills the Machango worm. It's a local parasite which introduces itself, really, under the skin, often through the soles of the feet, and proceeds to subcutaneously around the body until it reaches the soft part under the eye, where it can be last removed by an operation. That sounds like a scary movie, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Scott Jar in that shirt, nah.
What's it
Okay.
called?
It's the Michango, Machango worm.
Chongo worm. Try not to. I think they sell those at Mariner games.
They might. Chocolate covered.
More on that. Let me introduce you to Don King by Mark Cram, the fight's lone arranger. And look how Mark Cram describes boxing promoters. He says, they viewed words like loyalty, character, and honor as cave animals might look upon sunlight. Such things always surprise them. So, not a fan of boxing promoters, to say the least. One other way to describe them, though, would be white. Most of them male, and all of them white. Until now, Don King, the newest boxing promoter, and he was, according to Cram, big, black, and hardly beautiful. A 50-carat setting of sparkling vulgarity and raw energy. A man who wants to swallow mountains, walk on oceans, and sleep on clouds. So basically, Don King is getting into the fight business, and
He stayed there.
his main competitor, if you will, was Bob Arum. And
Right.
for the most part, in my lifetime, when boxing was big, those were the two
Yeah.
promoters.
Right.
And Don King was in your face.
Yeah.
Bob Arum always was sort of laid back, but it seemed like Bob Arum was maybe not the
No.
best, but he always came off sort of like that grandfatherly type.
Right,
Like,
right.
I like Mr. Arum.
Yeah.
And Don King came off, "Run!" You're like, oh, that guy's way too much.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Have you ever met Don King?
I
Have you ever
did
been-
once.
Have you stood next to him?
At Channel 9, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I stood next to him. That is a big
Big
dude.
man.
He is a
Big
He is a big
man,
man.
yes.
And then the hair's, he's not he's
Yeah.
not a pushover.
He has not gotten here by taking the easy road. Spent 4 years in prison for manslaughter. King says the victim was a friend who worked for him as a layoff man in his numbers domain. Quote, when he got out of prison, I bought him new clothes, teeth, but then he turned around and bit me. He ran off with some money, and then I wouldn't let him work till he made good on it. He jumped me from behind, and we went outside. His head hit the concrete. King pauses. He expired. I suffered great contrition since. I've suffered great contrition since. So I always knew he had been in prison. Doesn't sound like, sounds like he just settled things the old-fashioned way, and it didn't go well.
Yeah, but they said, what did it say here? It said the second-degree murder charge was knocked down to manslaughter.
Right.
Right.
And then he got 1 to 20 years, so he figured I'll be paroled in 11 months. Nope, they kept him there 4 years.
Yeah, they sure did. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that says something, I think, but maybe not. Maybe they had it in for him. I don't know. But now he's out, and he's trying to he has to convince Ali. That's the key. Arum is Ali's guy, and Don King is trying to convince him to come with him. Once he gets Ali, he thinks he can get then Foreman and promote this fight that's going to take place in Africa. And his main thing is going to these guys and saying, come with me. I've got the black man's best interest. Don't stay with this white guy. He doesn't give a crap about you. Come with me. He said, let me find this. This is my promotion, and I'm black. Here's a chance, a big chance to show all blacks that black men black men together can succeed like no one has ever believed we could. He was able to convince Ali, then he was able to convince Foreman, and basically a star was born in Don King in the boxing world.
Yeah, and the fact that didn't he go out, like Foreman said he would not take any interviews with anybody, and King went out there and got him like in a parking lot.
Right.
Waited for him in a parking lot.
And that shows guts.
That shows guts.
Because Foreman had just been screwed by the Venezuelan government.
They took his purse.
They took $247,000 in taxes.
Yeah.
So King sent him immediately $150,000 up front to show as a show of good faith. And he moved mountains.
That's how
to
we
make
got
that
Foreman.
fight happen.
That's how we got him.
Yeah,
because Foreman, they said he was not talking, will not do any interviews, and there he is.
Now, back then, the three networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, that was how we saw our sports back then for the most part.
Yep.
And CBS that year, Mark, made a big change in their sports coverage by hiring who?
Robert Wessler, and he became VP at CBS, and then later would become head of CBS. But he's probably more well known. He was one of the co-founders of CNN. But it's interesting because they were making it seem like CBS was having problems. CBS had got the NBA package for a while. They had it from 1973 to 1990. And that was in a period of time in the 70s where the NBA isn't what it is today.
No.
And especially 78, 79, the finals were like a tape delay on the East Coast, on the West Coast.
Yep.
Yeah. But I remember working at CBS in around 1990. CBS had everything.
Right.
They had the NFL package. They had the Major League Baseball package. They had the NBA package. I mean, they had all.
And they had
racing, too?
seen
Didn't they have
the
horse racing?
NBA go from tape delay
Yeah.
to the Magic Larry beginning
Right.
of
Into
Jordan
Michael,
years.
yeah.
I mean, when they lost the NBA was right when the NBA had just exploded.
Right.
I never
covered-
missed those. The CBS show, the NBA was so good.
I covered the last NBA final CBS did, which was Portland and Detroit, the Blazers
Pat
and Pistons.
O'Brien, that's it.
The following year, the Bulls-Lakers, with Jordan's first championship, I believe that was NBC. Then when NBC started the contract. But yeah, I mean, CBS for a while, had everything.
Yeah.
And it was great because at KCBS we did all post-game shows because we had all the major sports. So I got to go to Detroit and Portland.
Yeah.
No local teams involved because it was on CBS and we did post-game shows.
That was what TV was like back in the day.
yeah, it was
they
fun.
covered it
Same with
from
baseball.
top to bottom. When, like Mark said, going to the Toronto the Braves, what was it, the Toronto Philly World Series. They did those things. It wasn't just your local teams.
Right.
You covered sports.
Yeah.
Right. And then CBS got caught blindsided when Fox outbid them for the NFC package.
Right.
And that's what created Fox. Had they
Yeah,
not
that's right. They
outbid
knew that,
CBS, Fox might not exist.
That and The Simpsons.
Yeah, Simpsons still going, isn't it?
Right.
Dang.
But didn't and right around then in the early 90s, I think is when CBS got the Olympics as well for a while.
Yeah.
At least the Winter Games. Did they have both? I don't
They
remember.
had, I remember the Winter Games for sure. And I'm trying to think in terms of the summer game. I remember Lillehammer, like it just had happened.
Now there's so many hands in the pot with all these things. You don't know where anything
you don't
is.
know where to watch.
NBA's it's like Amazon,
Yeah.
NBC, but I do like that NBC's bringing back the John Tesh song.
Oh,
That
did they?
that was the best.
Yeah. Chinatown, oh my Chinatown. Taiwan again owned Williamsport in the Little League World Series against New Haven, Connecticut. The kids from Taiwan won 16-0 as their starter threw a one-hitter. In the semis against a team from Ohio, another one-hitter, an 11-0 win. In the finals, a much closer game against the 12-year-olds from Red Bluff, California. Taiwan pitched a two-hitter in this one and actually gave up a run. Their first time doing that since 1972. Winning by a score of 12-1. So 39-1 in the three games against our United States kids. Taiwan.
U.S. was like, we scored a run. Yay.
Yeah.
And there was one kid on Taiwan that hit 727.
Yeah.
I mean,
And like 5 home runs.
yes. I mean,
and any other baseball stuff from this week, you guys?
just the Davy Lopes. Did you with that? Davy Lopes not only hit 3 home runs when he beat the Cubs, but then he went and he equaled a 70-year Major League record by stealing 5 bases to help Don Sutton defeat the Cardinals 3-0. He tried for a 6th stolen base in the game, got thrown out.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love Davy Lopes, another one of those underrated guys, man.
Mm-hmm.
He almost had Ellie de la Cruz had a 4-steal game this year.
And got thrown out.
Yeah, once. So he almost had
His
a 5.
Fifth,
right.
hit the
So I'm
fifth.
saying 5. I mean, that's 5 stolen bases in the game. We look at that; it sounds awesome. How much that puts on your body, though, too.
Oh my God.
Man.
Yeah.
The other thing I noticed in that whole thing about Lopes,
Yeah.
they also talked about Mike Marshall, who we discussed,
Right.
with
Yeah.
Monse, a relief pitcher, but he ran the bases
That's
back
right,
then. They
yeah.
didn't pitch, and he actually scored on it from
Yeah.
second base on an infield hit.
Yeah. Well, I think someone mentioned, I think it was Mark, that he didn't come up as a pitcher.
Yeah, it was an
Mark did,
infield.
yeah.
He also threw 6 scoreless innings in relief.
Yeah, my gosh.
as the Dodgers won in 12 innings over the Cubs. And my last one was California's Nolan Ryan was at it again. He strikes out 19 Detroit batters before losing 1-0 in the 11th. That gave him another record, a 3-game total of 47 whiffs. He struck out 19 Red Sox on August 12th, 9 Brewers on August 16th, and 19 more on August 20th. 47 strikeouts in 3 games in 8 days.
Wow. My God. Man, God, that's a season for some.
She's just like one of the boys. We've talked a lot about Chris Everett, the horse this summer. The filly has been great, but another 2-year-old filly has been even better, Ruffian. Up in Saratoga to close out the year, the 2-year-old is undefeated. Ruffian scared off all but 3 opponents in the 83rd spin-away, so just 4 horses ran the race. It was no contest. She won by nearly 13 lengths. Now get this, in 10 career races, from May of 74 to June of 75, Ruffian not only won all 10, she never once trailed in a race.
Wow.
Isn't that
Dang.
amazing? In her 11th race, a match race against 1975 Kentucky Derby winner Foolish Pleasure, Ruffian broke her right foreleg. The jockey Jacinto Vasquez tried to pull up and stop her, but the champion horse kept running, even with the broken leg. Finally, they got her to stop, and she underwent 12 hours of surgery, but when the anesthesia wore off, she thrashed around violently, breaking her elbow in the process. At 2:25 a.m., she was euthanized. Just 3 years old, Sports Illustrated included her as the only non-human on their list of top 100 female athletes of the century. We are talking one of the greatest horses of all time, no doubt.
I think the horse comes up with some issue in faces in the crowd. I think.
I mean, to win your first 10 races, and then you're going to go for 11-0, and that ends up being.
And that ends it. All right, our cover story, Make It or Break It. We have talked a bunch of times about Evel Knievel and how popular he was as a sports figure back in the 70s. Known as a daredevil, and he may not have been the first or the last, but he certainly was the most famous. Usually he's jumping buses on his motorcycle, but this time he's in a rocket. And I got to say, as a 6-year-old, I don't remember a whole bunch about sports back then. I was too young, but I remember this, and I remember thinking, we're going to watch someone die on live television.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't happen, but I mean, it's amazing that it didn't. There's that one of what he jumped the Caesar Palace, tried to jump the fountains, and you see that, and his body's just like going, how he didn't die.
Right, and he's racing motorcycles, and I decided to do a rocket, which is a little gimmicky, and it kind of was the highlight of his career, the apex of his career, and then kind of afterwards, it was kind of not the same.
Right.
Because it didn't do anything that everyone expected, because he went up and basically just sort of floated down with the parachute, and it was like, because there was so much setup.
Yes.
And the crowd was huge.
And you can't go back to just racing motorcycles then,
No.
because, hey, you were in a rocket.
Yeah.
What are you gonna...
That's what happened, is he basically ran out of things to jump.
Yeah.
Right.
And he had to try to recreate himself, and it was kind of like Al Capone's vault in a way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I remember
That was
watching
that
that,
Ronaldo
too.
Rivera.
Right.
There was nothing in the vault.
Nothing.
Right. Many think the canyon jump is a suicide mission. At first, he wanted to try a jump over the Grand Canyon, but the U.S. Department of Interior denied him airspace over it because, as SI put it, national parks are not meant for the suicidal self-aggrandizement of the citizenry.
Well put.
But did you read what they said about, about the size of that?
Yes.
If you have that in front of you, Scott,
The size of the Grand Canyon?
yes, compared to
it's
Snake
like
River.
4 times bigger.
Yes, I mean, just I have the
Yeah, my wife's
18
grandparents.
miles from rim to rim.
Yeah.
I mean, and the Snake River at one point is less than a mile wide.
Right.
Ugh.
My wife's grandparents lived off the Snake River. So
did they really?
it runs through Idaho, all through Idaho.
Wow.
And there's sections where it's just a little tiny thing, But yeah, the Snake River, because it's like a snake. It snakes through.
At first, the plan was to figure out how to jump the Snake River in Idaho on a motorcycle. When Evel realized that wasn't possible, he hired a team to build a rocket, which is, of course, what anyone would do.
Right.
Yes, obviously.
Called it the Sky Cycle. Sounds like a good idea. If the heater doesn't blow up and scald me to death on the launch ramp, he says, if the countdown goes right, if the sky cycle goes straight up and not backward, if it actually reaches 2,000 feet, if the chute works, if I don't hit the wall at 400 miles per hour, if I can get out of it when it lands, if I win, if it doesn't work, I'll split the canyon wall in the eye just before I hit. Then again, I've got 5 backup systems. The 5th one, the Lord's Prayer.
Wow.
So he kind of knew. There are many that thought that they knew it wasn't going to work, that it was just he couldn't back out, and that it was all promo and stuff.
Yeah, and it was hour after hour, you know,
days.
Yeah, it wasn't.
You know, I remember
they would just
long.
they go and show a live shot of the ramp, and be like, oh, this is going to be great. Incredibly enough, he came up with that after a night of drinking.
I know.
He said he saw a calendar on the wall, and he looked up. I can do that. I mean, that sounds like, you know, what I used to do. You drink. Hey, we can do that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great idea. You wake up the next day and you're like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, but not many people. Oh, you said you're going to jump a rocket. Oh, I was drinking.
The Snake River Canyon was not what you would call a success. It was successful in terms of, like we said, the hype, and he didn't die. But the rocket blasts off, and immediately the safety chute opens, sending the sky cycle at Knievel in a downward spiral to the floor of the Snake River. People thought he was dead.
Yeah, I did.
But he was okay, and he lived to see another day. But that was kind of, like you said, Mark, that was kind of like the end of Evel at his apex,
Right.
you know. Evel Knievel once said, you know, I've always been concerned about kids, not just my own 3, but all kids. What kind of an image I'm providing for them, what kind of inspiration, I don't know. Maybe I'm leading them down the path to self-destruction. One of those kids was a young man by the name of Bubba Blackwell, who has broken many of Evel's records over the years, including jumping 15 buses. His videos absolutely amazing, both the successful jumps and the not successful ones. This guy, all I can do is shake my head when I think of the things Bubba Blackwell has done and tried to do. It is the true definition of what life as a daredevil is. And Bubba, thanks for joining us on the Pastor Prime podcast. We really appreciate you coming on.
Man, it's great to be here. Thank you guys for reaching out. It's been a lot of fun, and I've been retired since 2020. And it's been kind of quiet, you know. So, thank you guys for reaching out. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. So let's start off with the guy who's on the cover of Sports Illustrated, which was the impetus for us to look into guys like you, and that's Evel Knievel. What kind of impact did he have on you? Because I know for me as a 6-year-old in 74, when he's doing these Snake River things, I mean, I had the lunchbox.
Yep.
I had the toy thing that jumped over. I mean,
I had that.
He had all, you know, he had my attention full stop. What about you?
Yeah, he was a walking, living, breathing cartoon character and a superhero. I was like every other little kid, you know, playing in the neighborhood in Mobile, Alabama. And I remember being outside riding on my bicycle, and Mom would holler at the front door, and she'd say, "Evel Knievel's on," and we'd all run inside and watch him jump. And the interesting thing is that, you know, all the successful jumps are great, but when he'd crash, oh man, that's when we had to go out and ride our bicycles and do a jump, run into the bushes and fall off of it and act like we were Evel Knievel. So I'm not really sure what to take from that, but just remember we're talking to a Bubba from the South, so wasn't a whole lot he was working with in the beginning. But yeah, man, we just love to watch that guy. I just really enjoyed the presentation. I like the flash. I like the bravado. And, man, I just, you know, it's what we used to talk about during school break or, you know, when we were supposed to be paying attention, which I was lucky to be a D student. So we talked a lot. But he was just so much fun to talk about and emulate on our bicycles. So, yeah, he was a major influence. And, of course, I can't tell you how many of the wind-up motorcycle toys that I had. I know I had at least 2 or 3 of them.
Which, let's be honest,
You know,
never
it's just
worked.
Yeah, they didn't. Mine wouldn't jump.
I had so much fun with that, but it was always so much fun to crash it, you know.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know what to take from that, but
to a
was
generation of kids like you and me, he, like you said, he was bigger than life. He was a stunt man, but he was also this incredible showman. I kind of compare him to the wrestler Ric Flair, because it wasn't just what he did, it was how he did it. And like you said, we all look at the jumps that made it, and we're like, oh, that's kind of great, he made it. But it was the ones where he didn't that you were like, oh my God, you know. Yeah. Why is that? Why would that draw you to do that?
I don't know. I think I'm like you. The Ric Flair thing is a real good way of describing it, because, you know, there was other guys out there jumping back then, but Evel rode the Harley. You know, it didn't sound like a ring-ding-ding-ding-ding motorcycle that woke you up on Saturday morning because you were aggravated with the kid next door. I mean, he rode a growling, deep-toned Harley, and he'd come by you doing a wheelie, and he'd be in first or second gear, and the motor would be screaming its guts out. You'd swear up and down he was doing 100 miles an hour, and, you know, Evel being the showman, he'd say 110, and he's probably going 45, but it didn't matter. It looked so amazing because the bike he rode, he had that cape. You remember the cape?
Yes.
Guy was just a walking showman. You had to stay glued to him because you didn't know what he was going to say next.
He was like Elvis on a bicycle.
Yeah, it's fair. Yeah,
that's how I look at him. So what kind? Go ahead.
I actually got to become friends with Evel. And I asked him one time, had he ever met Elvis? And he said, in fact, that he did. But, you know, the interesting thing, which was odd to me, was Evel didn't elaborate much on it. He just said, yeah, he had met him, I guess, down at the where Elvis was doing that residency back in the day. But, yeah, he had a relationship with Elvis. And how could you not be impressed with that? And vice versa. Yeah. I'm sure Elvis was a big fan of Evel.
You know, whether it's Evel or you, what kind of mindset does it take for someone to get on a motorcycle and go, you know what, this might be the last time I'm doing this?
Well, I guess you might say I never thought of it that way, but...
Yeah, you don't have that mindset.
I know, exactly. Thank you, Bubba. Yeah, I may die.
Maybe that's me.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I just think it's more of it's a job that you have set yourself up to do. I always wanted to make a living riding a motorcycle, and I saw it as clear as day, man. To me, could not have been clearer. In the early 90s, Harley Davidsons were so incredibly popular. Not only was Harley Davidson Motor Company making a lot of money, but so was the dealership. And, you know, because you pay attention to things, I found out that Harley Davidson made their dealers do 9 outdoor events. And this is back then. They had to do 9 outdoor events in their parking lot. And I got to thinking, I'm like, well, wait a minute. The coolest guy to ever ride a motorcycle was Evel Knievel. And he rode a Harley back in the day. And, you know, the AMF days, Harleys were junk. Plain and simple. There's no getting around it. But the one bike that was never junk was the XR750, the flat tracker. And I was always a fan of Evel Knievel, but I was a bigger fan of the XR750 because I always dreamed of being a flat track racer. And although I like Evel's motorcycle, as far as XR750 is concerned, I always kind of thought it was ugly because he didn't have number plates, he didn't set it up to be real like a race bike. And I always wanted to build an XR750 race bike, but heck, I couldn't ride worth a crap. So I figured I'd get one and start jumping it like Evel did, and I could market myself to all these dealerships. And man, it was just like a business plan that was laid out in front of me, and I just can't believe it all came true. And, you know, you go do one, and then somebody else hears about it, and you do more. And this is back before the internet, so I'd have to always take pictures and market myself. And to my surprise, man, it caught on. Next thing you know, your mouth is overloading your butt, and you say you're going to do this jump, and then they give you these crazy paychecks you never thought you'd get. I was like, well, crap, I got to go do it now. And I guess you might say it was trial by fire. And, you know, I had a really bad crash in Del Mar, July the 4th of 2001. And people asked me, my God, are you done? I'm like, you know, what are you going to do now? And it's like, first of all, I'm going to heal up. I'm gonna go do it again. I know what I did wrong.
Oh,
It's
my God.
physics. It's not sexy, but it's a physical act. If you don't make it, it's because something went wrong. Find out what went wrong and go do it again. And you can't do a career like this without thinking you're never going to crash because you're fooling yourself. So I guess you might say it's a matter of testing you how much you want to do something.
How is it when you're going into a jump? What is going through your mind? You're getting on the bike, you're getting ready to go jump over 15 buses. What's the mindset there?
Why did I not stay in college? that. But again, that was the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's a deal that we had put together. I got really, really lucky. I lived in the bottom of Alabama, a little town called Bon Secure, and it's near Gulf Shores. Well, all of the Nashville superstars loved the fishing in Gulf Shores. And there was an agent for Kenny Rogers. Remember how big Kenny Rogers was?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The
Well,
gambler.
his booking agent, yeah, exactly, and it's specifically the gambler, because the person that I met who really, really thought what I was doing was kind of cool and decided to take me on as a project was a fellow by the name of C.K. Spurlock. He was Kenny Rogers' exclusive booking agent all through all of his golden years. And CK is an extremely smart, very wise businessman. And if there's any listeners out there that have ever heard of a sprint car, winged outlaw sprint car, one of the greatest chassis out there was called the Gambler Sprint Car. Well, CK is the one that built that company. Obviously, the Gambler being a spinoff of all the Kenny Rogers success, but CK just, for whatever reason, thought I was pretty darn interesting. And, this guy's kind of clever and kind of stupid. And, maybe there's some charisma there. I don't know. But for whatever reason, he decided to help me with my career. And it just kept going and going and going. And he got me some really amazing paychecks. And I'm so grateful. But, jumping a Harley Davidson, there's a limit to it. There is going to come a time where I don't really want to go to work today. And as life got going, and I had some other things going on, and it just got to where, okay, I've had enough. This is good. I can still walk. I can still touch my toes. I can somewhat cleverly put together a sentence. Yeah, I think I'm good. So October 24th, 2020 was my last jump down in Laurel, Mississippi. It was a really cool event, and I hung my boots up, you might say, because I started a trucking company, and my gosh, if I'd have done this years ago, I'd have probably never done a motorcycle jump.
Bubba, when it comes to your jumps, it's the proverbial, I've got some good news and I've got some not so good news. So let's start with the good news. Can you share with us, a favorite jump of yours and why it stands out?
Well, probably my first world record jump. I believe it or not, even though I stutter now because, unfortunately, I've had so many head injuries. I've got a lot of scar tissue on my brain. I've been hurt a lot, and I remember I had to go to the doctor one time, and he ran me out through all these tests, and they shoot dye in me. They put you in this machine for about 30 minutes, and so whenever all that was over with, I came back to him and I asked him. I said, "Well, okay, what did we find out?" He goes, "Oh, nothing. You're fine. You're fine. Don't worry. You're good." I said, "Okay." He said, "But you got a lot of scar tissue on your brain." I said, "Okay, what's that mean?" He goes, "No, nothing. When you get older, you might have punch drunk boxer issues, but you're fine. Your balance is good. There's nothing wrong." And well, unfortunately, that was I guess that was 22 years ago, so it's finally kicking in. But no, the most outstanding one that sticks out the most is my very first world record jump was April 26, 1998, in downtown Everett, Massachusetts. and it was to open up the world's largest Harley-Davidson dealership. And the guy that owned the store, his name is John Atwood. Well, John's nickname in school was Evil. He even had Evil tag on his motorcycle. And he called me up one day and goes, look, we're going to do this world record Harley-Davidson dealership. And we'd love for you to come and open it up with us. What do you think you could do? And I said, John, well, the only thing you can do by jumping or opening up a world record Harley-Davidson dealership is to do a world record jump. And he goes, okay, what's that? And I said, well, Evel Knievel claimed that he jumped 19 cars, which he did. It was 18 Opals and one van. So it was 19 cars. I'll come up and jump 20. He goes, okay, that sounds good. And how much? And I threw a number at him, and I just kind of, I went for broke. Because that's basically
Go
what
high.
I was.
Go
I
high.
was broke at the time. Yeah, I shot him a number. He goes, sounds great. Let's do it. I'll never forget. What did I say? Wait a minute. Why did I shoot so low, And it's basically from that point on, my life got so much better because fortunately, about a week later, I was on a plane to fly up there and do a press release, and John gave me a 50% deposit, which was sweet. And all my creditors at the time was really happy about that. So I got caught up on all my bills, had money in my pocket, and I came up with a plan to make sure that it was the best show I'd ever done. And at the time, Harley Davidson was selling everything. Man, they had Harley underwear, Harley cigarettes. You guys remember all this. And they had just bought 51% of controlling interest in the Buell Motorcycle Company. And the Buells are amazing, but they hadn't really caught on. They were kind of like the little stepchild of Harley. The only place you could buy a Buell was inside of a Harley store. The salesman would make a fortune selling you a Harley, but, they basically make $100 selling you a Buell. And even though they were sport bikes, cool as they could be, they didn't really care. They just kind of would rather sell you a Harley. So the Buells were a little bit struggling, but I always loved them. And so with part of my money, I said, hey, John, I want to put on a really good show. I want to come out there and do a bunch of stuff. Why don't you give me one of them Buells and I'll put it in my show? He goes, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So my idea was obviously to get the attention with the jump, but I wanted to make sure the factory knew that I had a good idea. I could go out and do all these crazy things on that Buell motorcycle and help promote it. So that's exactly what I did. John sent me a Buell. I rode it. I was blown away with how good it rode, how much stuff I could do on it. So when time come for the jump, this is how John had the right connections. We're up there. We're trying to get permission because John and them wanted to sell beer at this outdoor event. They shut down Route 16 in Everett, which had never been shut down in history. It was 6 lanes. It was 3 on one side, a median, and 3 on the other. They tried to get the mayor to shut the road down for the grand opening and for the jump. And we only wanted like 2 blocks or something. I had a hard time. And a phone call was made to a very large man with a very strong accent, and permission was granted. And I don't want to elaborate on that, but there's some strong-armed people in Boston that kind of control things. And that was my first time. I'm this little punk boy from nowhere, Alabama, and I go up there and I meet all these people with these black Cadillacs and pinky rings and all this, and I'm in Crazyville for all I know. And so they got the road shut down. They were able to sell beer. 50,000 people came to this jump.
Wow.
I remember coming out of my trailer and looking at the crowd thinking, oh my God, even if I bust my butt, at least it's going to be in front of a huge crowd. This is what I would consider successful. So I got out there on that Buell, first of all, did all these crazy tricks, and I kept burning the tire till the tire blew. Now I was doing all of this with a microphone in my helmet going over the loudspeaker. So I was really, really working the crowd. And when the tire blew, the place went bananas. Well, at this point, it's time for the jump. So I went back to my trailer, and I guess there was a band playing or something. I went back to my trailer, and you kind of shift gears. The announcer comes on. All right, everybody, are you ready for this? Here he comes. And they make this grand entrance or music or whatever, and I'm in this totally different outfit, and now I'm on the Harley Davidson XR 750. There's 20 cars between the ramps. There's people everywhere. It was the most insane thing this little redneck boy had ever seen in his life. Went out there and made a couple speed runs, doing wheelies, and I'm getting ready. I got them all jacked up, and then finally I go to the top of the ramp to get one last look over all the cars, okay? And I reach over and I turn the engine off. And that crowd's just going, but they're screaming and screaming. And I back down the ramp. I hand my motorcycle off to one guy and I grab a microphone. I went to the top of the ramp. They're screaming, they're freaking out. And I told them, I said, ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time when maybe a daredevil is bitten off just a little bit too much. And immediately these people turned on me. Boo! They were so upset, thinking that I was going to back out. But I said, but today is not that day. Let's get it on. And man, by this, just going bananas. And you got to understand, there's 50,000 people there. And I've never done anything this big in my life. And where this confidence and showmanship came from, I don't have a clue. But I walked back down the ramp, put my helmet on, fired the bike up, turned around, and I literally was a 12-year-old kid at Morningside School where we used to talk about Evel Knievel. I was immediately that kid, and I made that jump. I became the first guy in the world to ever break an Evel Knievel record on a Harley Davidson. Same size ramp, same kind of motorcycle. And I landed that motorcycle. There's a feeling that is so hard to describe because you go from all of the, I guess you'd call it terror, because you've got to do this. You are fully committed. You're there. You're 2,500 miles away from home. There's people everywhere. You're not getting out. They've already paid you crazy money. And you've got to do this. And when you take that kind of built-up tension and terror is a good word for it, and you do it, and you land it, and you ride it out, and you're going to live. You made it. Man, it's the most incredible feeling in the world. And I guess the only other time that I might say I had the same feeling was when I did the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. I came out there with a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, a lot of adrenaline flowing. And then they went to commercial. I went outside, got on my bike, and I jumped 14 semi-trucks live. And then when I came back inside, the adrenaline rush escapes your body so fast. It's almost like you could take a quarter and balance it on the end of your finger. You're so relaxed and just kind of in awe that you made it. So yeah, it's a hard thing to describe, but it's more like an adrenaline dump. You're all wound up, and then you're safe. You're not going to the hospital. You're not going to die. So yeah, it's a great feeling. It's addictive, that's for sure.
The terror turns to euphoria.
That's exactly what happened.
We had an Olympic diver. We had an Olympic diver on the show last week, and she said that the biggest thrill she got doing the springboard was going up, the flying, okay? The thing she dreaded the most was the coming down, the landing at a high speed. Yeah. Is that the same for you? Was the flying the fun part?
It was all fun. The terror, the strange thing is, when you do this and you got to do it just right, what I always focused on was the very end of the takeoff ramp. That's where I looked, right there, all the way approaching the ramp. I'm looking at the very end of the takeoff ramp. And immediately when you hit the ramp and you see that gap, I don't care if you're going 200 miles an hour, you have a feeling that you're not going fast enough. And so your focus point immediately goes to where you're going to. You don't really look around. You don't get to enjoy the ride. And you're so focused on keeping that darn motorcycle underneath you that you really don't have that sensation. The hit is hard every single time. Even if you land in what they call the sweet spot of the down ramp, it's still extremely hard because this motorcycle weighs a ton and it only has about 4 inches of suspension travel. So I guess that part of it you're already ready for. Sometimes it's just not quite so bad, but no, once I hit that takeoff ramp and I'm in midair, I kind of know I'm going to make it, and I don't care. Just let me back down to the ground. Let's go. You know, I didn't mind that at all. I just on the ground.
Yeah.
So now let's go to the one. We talked about the good news.
Let's go to what now?
We talked about the good news of the ones that go well, the jumps. Let's talk about 2001. What do you remember about that jump? The one in Del Mar with the
what I
bad wreck?
remember at Del Mar. I was very, very handsomely paid, and I had jumped there 2 years before. So this was kind of like we had broke their attendance record, and so they had me come back 2 years later because they didn't want to go to the well again. So they skipped a year, came back. Well, this time I wanted to really freak them out, and I brought in a $20,000 laser light show just for my entrance. And all I cared about was making sure everything was perfect on my intro. The lasers were everywhere. Just all this stuff was, I'm a showman, and I wanted to make sure that I gave them their money's worth. So I remember that was my focus. The cars were in place, and boy, I got them suckers close together. But it was still a 135 feet gap. But that's what I focused on. I wanted to make sure everybody got the best show available. And unfortunately, I forgot to put down roll roofing, which is like a tar paper. I had jumped on horse tracks a couple times before, and you can water them, roll pack them, and they're fine if you do a couple wheelies and you're ready to go. But this time, they had been really grinding up the surface, and it was really like powder. Because right after the fair, the thoroughbred season was going to start, and they were getting a jump on it. But they had watered it, roll packed it, and it seemed really good. Well, I didn't even think about the fact that, okay, it's okay now, but once you make a few passes and do a couple wheelies, you're going to chew it up. And I didn't use a speedometer at the time. I'd always go in fourth gear, it's only a 4-speed transmission. I never changed the gearing, so I always knew about where I needed to be. And that's what I thought I was doing. I had done a jump just a little bit bigger a couple of weeks before, redoing the Tonight Show jump. I jumped 14 semis on the Tonight Show, but if you watch the video close, you'll see that I kind of hit the safety ramp. Well, I never wanted to claim something I didn't do, so back in my hometown at the time, I got 14 brand new Peterbilts, lined them up, and we had a really big show for the Travel Channel. And I cleared that sucker big time. So I was all excited. So going into the Del Mar jump, I just wanted to focus on putting on a really good show. And I felt super confident about the jump because I'd just done one a little bit bigger. And, what I do is I make a few speed runs, really work the crowd. And when I'm ready to go, I'll go back to my starting point. I'll lift up my visor. I'll put the bike in neutral. I'll say a prayer. And once I say my prayer, it's time to go. I don't sit around thinking, okay, God, did you hear me? Really kind of need you here, I say my prayer, throw the visor down, pull the clutch in, and I'm gone. And that's the last I remember. I don't remember getting closer to the ramp. I don't remember any of it. I woke up a couple of days later at Scripps Memorial Hospital in La Jolla, California.
What did you think when Evel Knievel announced that he was going to do the Snake River jump? He was going to get on this rocket and go across the Snake River. Did you think he was crazy?
Well, I was really young at the time, and I don't know what I thought about it because Evel jumped a motorcycle. This was a rocket, and we had not long previously went to the moon in a rocket, so I was a little bit confused by it. But it was Evel Knievel. I didn't care what it was. I was going to watch. I was going to do my best to pay attention to it. But when it all happened, the way it happened, and then, his career kind of really slowed down after that, I guess you might say I didn't really like it because my hero began his decline. And I wanted to see that guy forever. And I learned a lesson from that because Evel was such a showman. People would have came to see him jump over one Volkswagen because it was Evel Knievel's a legendary showman. And instead, once he got to where he felt as though he was getting outdone or couldn't jump any farther, he made some bad choices. He got in trouble and he had to go to jail and lost all of the toy manufacturing arrangements and sponsorships, and all the toys went away, and kind of so did Evel. And forever, it seemed like he was gone. And that is the reason that in the late 90s or late 80s, I guess you'd say, early 90s, I kind of thought, well, Evel Knievel was the coolest guy in the world. And when I started putting this plan together, everybody would say, yeah, how did he die? I'm like, well, he didn't die. Evel's still around. And it helped me to springboard my career because I started making people remember Evel Knievel. And I called him on the phone out of the blue, and we actually became friends. And he was such a nice guy, and so charming, and he was a really neat guy to get to know, and I'm really grateful for that.
I was going to say that you had mentioned that you had met him. Did he give you any advice, or did he try to talk you out of jumping, or what did he say to you?
No, at first our friendship was just, it's almost as though I was breathing life into him through my exploits, because I used to love to call and tell him what I was doing. And I remember one time in particular that I was loading up my trailer, loading up my ramps, loading up my motorcycle, making sure I had everything. And I was sweating head to toe, and I was getting ready to go do a jump. And Evel called me, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, well, I'm loading up my ramps. I'm getting ready to go do a jump, and I'm making sure I got everything and double checking this, that, and other. And he said, "It's fun, ain't it?" And I thought, I know what he meant. He didn't mean it was fun jumping. He meant it's fun getting ready to hit the road and go do this adventure, because that's the way I saw every time I'd leave the house. It was the adventure. I loved getting all my gear together, loading the truck, and getting fully ready to go. I'd run in the house, take a shower, and it's getting in the truck, going on the adventure. And that's exactly what I live for. I love that so much, which ironically is the joy I get having my own trucking company now. And guys, you're talking to the luckiest guy on the planet. First of all, I'm still alive after a career like that, and I found my calling. I don't work. I get paid to be away from my family, but there's no way you can call this work. This is the coolest job on the planet, and I absolutely love it. I'm home every day. I got weekends off. I can set my schedule like I want, and the pay is shockingly well, and I just, it's hard for me to be negative, and I've got no place for it. I'm super grateful for everything I ever got to do.
That comes across with everything we've heard so far, so that's nice to hear.
Yeah, I just want to follow up, go back a little bit. I saw that jump over the helicopters with the blades going.
Yeah.
Whose idea was that? I mean, any slip up there, you're not waking up at Scripps Hospital in one piece. We got a few Bubbas that we're looking at.
I remember what I wanted to make sure I did was, if I was going to jump helicopters, the blades wasn't going to be just barely spinning. I wanted them suckers buzzing.
Yeah.
And the guy that owned the helicopter company goes, "All right, come on, let's go." I said, "What are we doing?" He said, "I'm going to show you what you can expect." I said, "Let's go, man." We go up in the helicopter, we go over this field with a lot of tall grass, and we land, and it's pressing all the grass down. He goes, "All right, I'm going to go to neutral." And this sucker is spinning. I mean, it's buzzing. And he pitches the rotors to where they're flat, and all the grass stood right back up. He goes, "I'm going to tell you and put your mind at ease that 6 inches above my rotors, 6 inches below, you will not feel any wind." He said, "So blank that out of your mind." And I said, "Well, okay, I appreciate that." Now, being a showman, You don't tell your crowd that. You tell your crowd, oh my God, we don't have a lot of room. I don't know what I was thinking. It's a lot bigger than I ever thought. I've never jumped with my ramps extended like this. Y'all get ready. Get your cameras ready. This could be something. You might want to watch your kid's eyes or something. This might be bad. And luckily I made the jump. But there's times that I go to the top of the ramp, and I always do this. I do one last run up the ramp and one last inspection about where it is I need to go. And I try to blank out what's in between. I focus on where it is I want to go. Well, in this case, I really couldn't see it. All I could see was a dadgum blade spinning like crazy. And I thought to myself, me and my big mouth.
We do a segment here, a trivia segment called 50-50. So I'm going to give you a 50% chance of getting a trivia question right. So 3 years before this article came out, and a year before he does the Snake River jump, there's the Evel Knievel movie that came out with George Hamilton playing Evel Knievel. At the end of the picture, true or false, they kind of allude to the fact that he might die doing some crazy jump over a canyon.
Yes, I remember that well. George Hamilton did a great job of portraying Evel in that. And I got to tell you, of all the motorcycles Evel rode, that white 1970 XR 750 was the coolest bike he rode. It looked great with the leathers, and George Hamilton looked really cool on it. And he's on this dirt road, and they're panning, and the speech is going over the titles or whatever, and then they pan forward, and it's the Grand Canyon, and it was kind of insinuating that George was wide, or Evel was wide open on his way to jump the Grand Canyon in the movie. But he goes on to say that his death was going to be glorious. I thought that was great, man.
Right. So basically, he said, we have little choice about our life. The only thing really left to us is a choice about our death, and mine will be glorious. Wow. And then you see the picture of the Grand Canyon. So it wasn't Snake River, but they kind of had the idea that people thought before Snake River.
Yep.
I did too, the night before. I would say 75% of the people thought he would die doing that.
Yeah.
People did not think he was going to make it out there alive. So it was interesting the movie could foreshadow something like that possibly happening.
Well, I don't know about you, but I call that marketing genius. That's exactly what Evel was.
Yeah, he sure was,
I'd have done the same thing.
Yeah. Hey, you alluded to this earlier, and it reminded me of a saying my dad a friend of my dad's used to say to me all the time, which was, don't let your mouth write a check that your ass can't cash. And it sounds to me like, Bubba, your mouth's written a whole bunch of checks that your ass has cashed each and every one of them. I'm glad for you, your wife, your child, that you're in one piece. I know you say that at some point you're going to have maybe some issues, but you don't have any right now because you're telling us about dates and times and jumps, and I'm just we had a joy just getting to know you and wish you nothing but the best. So thank you for coming on our show today.
Man, you guys are great. Thank you so much. We're definitely ain't giving up yet. I still race, actually. I race Arma Flat Track. I got lucky enough. My wife is 24 years younger than me, and we got a 5-year-old daughter. And she's amazing. Life could not get any better. And I find a lot of encouragement communicating with people that have possibly had a little bit of a spotlight, adrenaline-filled career, and perhaps in the twilight they really don't know what to do with themselves. And should you ever want to contact me, check me out, Bubba Blackwell, on Facebook. But you can shoot me an email, hdjumper@hotmail.com or hdjumper@yahoo. And I just love to encourage people because, man, life since I stopped jumping has only gotten better. It's all a matter of how you approach everything. I still ride as often as I can, and ride around in my big semi truck, having fun.
Well, look, man, you proved it. Anyone can jump. It's those who land that we are still lucky enough to talk about. So thanks for coming on, Bubba. My best to you going forward. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
Bubba,
you.
I told you you'd be
You
awesome.
guys are great.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you guys
Talk
so
to you
much.
soon.
Y'all had a great time, and I look forward to hearing back from you.
You got it, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you. This seems to happen with, I'd say, about half of our shows where we end up getting a guest that we know very little about.
Because we didn't know about him.
If anything.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, I mean, I'll tell you what, if Bubba, and he is a master showman just like Evel is.
I know it was.
He should be a motivational speaker.
He should be.
That's
I
his,
talked to him about
that's
that.
his career.
Yeah.
Because
You know what he does?
I mean, he should be dead.
Right.
I mean, if you look
Yeah.
at that crash, and I don't want to get into too much detail in it, but the
You look
one
like
in
a
Del
rag
Mar,
doll.
It does.
He
It
does.
does.
He looks like Super Dave Osborne.
Yeah.
Remember those
Yes.
things from
Yeah.
Showtime?
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, human bodies are not meant to survive that.
It looked like you saw on those Super Dave things, he would crash and then there would be an obvious dummy,
Dummy
to
throw out there,
But
yeah.
he looked like a live dummy
did.
the way
He
he
did.
fell
Yeah.
there because there was it
No
was
movement.
flopping.
His
Yeah.
body looks.
Right.
Just,
But like you
know,
said, he knew nothing. He woke up days later.
Right.
That's how bad it was.
19 bones.
Yep. But what he does nowadays, when I talked to him the other day prior to him coming on the show, he said a lot of guys that get into motorcycle racing and jumping, he goes, when they can't do it anymore, he goes, they have nothing. He goes, they literally have nothing. And he goes, a lot of them turn to drugs, a lot of them in their life. So what he does is he puts out, when he was saying those email addresses and Facebook, to anyone out there, any guys, that women, men or women that are bikers, that he goes, because he goes, all your whole life, that's all you do is you race or you jump. And he goes, and all of a sudden one day, you can't do it anymore.
Right.
And he told me about friends of his. He goes, you watch them just degenerate right in front of you. And so he does that. He takes calls and has meetings, like you're saying, a motivational speaker. That's what he does with those guys
Yeah, you
and
can
women.
tell. You
He
can
does
tell.
it. He sits down with them and says, "Hey, I'll set you up with something. I'll get you going. Let's not do that." So, and he owes that to his wife and his daughter. And he said, he goes, once I got done and I found her, he goes, she changed my whole life. And he goes, and I can't let guys and women, men and women out there that have entertained people across the world, all of a sudden no one wants to see him anymore. And then they end up getting lonely, and that's it. So he does what you say, motivational. He's doing that.
Making a difference,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
That's all that matters, really.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And the positive attitude just
Yeah. But I'm saying, when we were kids, we used to, did you guys, when you had bikes when you were a kid, put up a ramp and just try to jump over it? We used to do that. We jumped over nothing.
Right.
To think that you go up to a ramp, you drive up and you ride up and go, okay, that's, I think there's 20 over there. And you got to go back. Everyone's cheering. No one gives a damn whether they don't want you to make it.
Right.
Most of them don't want you to make
Well,
it.
they want you to at least do it, because
they
when
want
he
you to
said, "I'm not going to do it," in Everett,
Yeah.
they started booing him.
They
right
don't
away.
want you. They want you. It's like when a lot of people watch racers, like the Indy. They want to see the crashes.
Yeah.
So the fact that you go back there and then go say a prayer and go game time,
Get
and
it
it's really
on.
a few seconds.
Yeah.
Ugh,
Takes a different person. That is
that's
for
not
sure.
me.
yeah, not me either.
All right, let's move on. I always sound like Bryant Gumbel when I say that. Let's
You
move
do, because
on.
that's what he says.
This is real sports.
For the record, I've got one.
All right.
Pleaded guilty. George Steinbrenner III, majority stockholder of the New York Yankees, to charges of illegal expenditure of corporate funds for campaign contributions to Richard Nixon's re-election campaign. Steinbrenner originally said he would fight the charges in court, but in August 1974, 2 weeks after Nixon resigned, Steinbrenner pleaded guilty to 2 charges in that case. He was personally fined $15,000, and on November 27th of that year, MLB Commissioner Bowie Kuhn suspended him for 2 years, later commuted it to 15 months. Ronald Reagan pardoned Steinbrenner in January 1989, one of the final acts of his presidency. So when Billy Martin said that famous quote where he said, there's a liar and a convict, when he was talking about Reggie and Steinbrenner.
Yeah, he was.
And think about that. That was the owner of the team and his star players.
Yep.
So Billy didn't care who he was talking
Man,
about.
baseball could sure use an owner like Steinbrenner.
Oh,
now.
God.
Someone that would just
You know.
speak. A guy
Well,
didn't do well, and he.
The other thing in his defense is that Steinbrenner stopped being that meddling guy
Yeah.
around 1990.
Yeah.
They won 7 world
They did.
championships under George Steinbrenner.
Yep.
They were highly. The Yankees were brought back to prominence
It was.
under George Steinbrenner.
He would not be outbid. No.
No.
He called it the way he saw it.
He sure
It
did.
didn't go over well with a lot of people player wise when he called Dave Winfield Mr. May. But still,
right.
he was
One of his own players.
one of his
once
own
again.
players. That's right, his own players.
Yeah.
Mr. May.
Quite a motivational speaker.
But I'm saying,
just like our boy Bubba.
because that's the type of thing where how many times do we ever sit, we'd watch a baseball game or listen, and you say something to your friend like, "That guy's a bum, man. He never hits."
Right.
George Steinbrenner would just say it.
Yeah. Faces in the crowd. Bill, start us off.
Kathy Kirchner, she was an 11-time Delaware Junior Olympic champion. And she also was a Delaware County Open Cross Country champion 4 times and as a state record holder from 72 to 75. Some of these people are so impressive.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And Mark, you got one that's just as impressive?
Well, I have 1.5.
Okay.
One is Larry King, who's a 19-year-old kid from L.A., National Public Parks
And you
tennis.
produced his show, right?
You did.
Right. So Larry King is such a popular name. So when you hear Larry King, you immediately think of,
Right.
Larry King, who I got the pleasure of working with 2
Right.
years. But, Billie Jean King's husband was Larry King also. So just the name just got to me. But the one I wanted to talk was Tommy Martin, who's 17 years old. He's from Stockton. He holds a judo black belt. He won the U.S. Judo Association National Junior Championships. And he ended up being a member of the 76 and 80 U.S. Olympic teams. Obviously, he didn't get to compete in,
Right, in
80. But in 75, he was selected to the Black Belt Magazine Hall of Fame.
Good for him.
So
Awesome.
They said his hands were as quick as anyone they had ever seen. People said you couldn't see his hands when he fought.
let's see him fight Bruce Lee in that
That's right.
pagoda.
Right.
That's right.
19th hole, Bill. What do you got?
Just something quick. We talked about this with Jennifer Chandler, that there's no teams. Birmingham, the WFL team, was so successful. And a gentleman's just saying, how come none of the sports will put a team here? And I just thought about us with that because it's right. They are a team. They are a city that the people back their team no matter what, and they can't
Well, like
seem
she
to get
said,
anybody.
when they had the Olympic pretrial soccer
That's
matches,
right.
there were 4 cities. I want to say it was D.C., Atlanta, Orlando, and Birmingham. Birmingham sold more tickets to those matches than the other 3 cities combined.
And
You'd think they'd all
yeah,
be sold
yeah.
out, but so yeah, it doesn't make sense that Birmingham has never had
Still,
a chance.
and Atlanta, from what I hear, is getting a 3rd NHL team soon. A few
Right.
years. Give it to Birmingham.
Right.
You,
Could
you
be
know,
called the Thrashers or the
you
Flames.
you lost
Atlanta
the
has
Flames. and
proven they don't care about
they
hockey.
don't go to Birmingham. It's sort of like Seattle. They go up there and they take their team in and they love them to death. But
Well, that's going to do it for September 2nd, 1974. Hope everyone enjoyed the long weekend and Labor Day, a day for everyone to labor.
That's right.
and have
For
fun.
Bill, for Mark, I'm Scott. We are past our prime.